The whole notion that victims can spot an abuser if only they know the right things to look out for is really unhelpful and puts the emphasis on the victim to be able to do this. Whereas in fact, most of us can't spot abusers. You know, we've just talked about how the neighbors couldn't spot it, the friends and the family and the community couldn't spot it. So why would you expect a victim who doesn't know the perpetrator very well, you know, who's just meeting them for the first time and the first few times, to be able to spot it? That same mask of "I'm such a good bloke" works on everyone to begin with. So perpetrators, I think, they aren't setting out to have a relationship or a partnership because they're not willing to be partners. They don't want to be partners. A partner is somebody who you share with, and who, if you have two partners, they're supposed to mutually enrich each other's lives. But the perpetrator isn't interested in enriching the person's life. They want to take the person's life. They want to exploit them economically. They want to enrich themselves at the expense of the other person and impoverish the other person economically, socially, financially, and impoverish them at an emotional level as well. They want to take and take and take and take from them, to exploit them in so many different incalculable ways. So this is the very opposite of partnership, in fact, or relationship, because there's no relational element to it. It's just take and take and take and take. So they're almost like, you know, perhaps a way of looking at it is perhaps that they're like a vampire sucking the life out of you, rather than a partner who's enriching you and bringing things into your life in a positive way. But when you first meet these perpetrators, of course, they're very charming. They seem to be offering you exactly what you wanted in that moment. And again, they're very good at working out quite quickly what it is you want. So they'll ask questions of you in the very early period that you know them, to work out what it is you want, you know, to what level of excitement and adventure you want compared to safety and stability. And then they'll seem to offer what they think you want. And it'll seem to be a whirlwind romance. You know, people use the phrase love bombing to you know, to to confuse you and to overwhelm you with so much love and attention. So they'll seem to be very into you. They'll seem like Prince Charming. They'll seem like the exact kind of person you were hoping to meet, and it'll seem like a whirlwind romance. It'll seem very romantic. And particularly if you're in a bad situation at the time, they'll seem like your savior. They'll seem like exactly who you needed to come into your life at that moment. And they'll seem like the answer to all of your prayers and your problems. And then the abuse will just start to creep in subtly at first, and then a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. But the abuser is very good at calculating when is a good time to bring in the abuse. And it's when they've got you committed. It's when they've got you hooked. It's often when they've got you economically vulnerable. So often there'll be a very quick move in. So you're economically tied up with them because you're now living together. And suddenly your bills are, you know, intertwined, and your living expenses are intertwined. They may get you pregnant very quickly. This is a common theme, and the media often doesn't pick up that this was a deliberate strategy from the perpetrator. So news reports will say, you know, the couple met, you know, very quickly. They had a baby with each other. You know, they had a baby together. Very quickly they moved in together, and the media often doesn't quite get that. Yes, that was deliberate on the perpetrator's part to entrap and entangle you, so that your lives are very intertwined. And once that happens, they can start to ramp up the abuse. So some victims say the abuse started when I got pregnant, or when I gave birth, or when we moved in together, or when we got married. The abuse didn't actually start then. It started the day they met you and started manipulating you. But that's when the abuser felt that they had you sufficiently entrapped that they could start obviously overtly showing their abusive intentions. So for the victim, that's when they first noticed and felt that they were being abused. But it actually started on day one, which is so it's so hard to come to terms with for victims and survivors, because they spend years thinking, if only I could figure out a way to get them to become the person they were when I first met them, surely that was the real them. And surely everything that's happened since has been some horrible mistake. And perhaps I did something wrong to cause all this to happen, or perhaps life circumstances caused this to happen. But surely I can get them to go back to being the person who seemed so lovely and seemed like my dream come true when we first met, but that person was never real. And that is just heartbreaking. But at the same time, it's also liberating, because it was never real. And this person that you thought that they were didn't exist. And so you can so you can kind of, if you can come to terms with that, you can let that all go, and it's not going to torment you and give you false hope anymore. But it's so emotionally tough. It's so emotionally tough. My heart just goes out to victims and survivors in these circumstances. What they're going through is just torturous. And I do really believe that they are survivors of torture, just every bit as much as a soldier who's been, perhaps tortured in war, like captured by the enemy and tortured in war. They are, this happened to them in a home rather than in a battlefield, but that is exactly what's happened to them. They were tortured by another person, and their human rights were violated day after day after day. So they've been through so much. It's not something you can just easily get over. It has such long-term consequences.